What's up, everybody? This is the Oera book published in 1876. It's alleged to be a copy of a manuscript from the 13th century, and supposedly in the 13th century, they were preserving history that had been handed down for thousands of years. These people call themselves the Frisians, which is Nordic, Northern Atlantic, eventually Viking type culture. And they call themselves Frisians because they are the children of the goddess Freya. I originally got into this book because of their story of the sinking of Atland that we'll get into. But what made me break this book back out is their tradition of laws and rules for society, and especially the role of women in society. And I've been digging through and I can't find that part just yet, but hopefully I'll find it while making this video. But let's just start out with what happened to their ancient homeland. According to their numbers, this was 3,000 years before 1296 when this was allegedly written, which, if true, would put this a couple thousand years before the Bronze Age collapse. But some of what they say is spot on with other cycles that have been documented. So if it is a forgery, then it's somebody that is well versed in catastrophism. This chapter is entitled How the Bad Times Came. During the whole summer, the sun had been hid behind the clouds, as if unwilling to look upon the earth, which sounds a lot like the 536 AD event, where for 18 months you just had a very faint, blue, hazy sun. There was perpetual calm, and the damp mist hung like a wet sail over the houses and the marshes. The air was heavy and oppressive, and in men's hearts was neither joy nor cheerfulness. In the midst of this stillness, the earth began to tremble as if she was dying. The mountains opened to vomit forth fire and flames. Some sank into the bosom of the earth, and in other places mountains rose out of the plain, again well documented. Auld land, called by the seafaring people Atland, disappeared, and the wild waves rose so high over hill and dale that everything was buried in the sea. Many people were swallowed up by the earth, and others who had escaped the fire perished in the water. It was not only in Finda's land that the earth vomited fire, but also in Twiskland, Germany. Whole forests were burned one after the other, and when the wind blew from that quarter, our land was covered with ashes. Rivers changed their course, and at their mouths new islands were formed of sand and drift. During 3 years this continued, but at length it ceased, and forests became visible. Many countries were submerged, and in other places lands rose above the sea, and the wood was destroyed through the half of Twiskland, Germany. Troops of Finda's people came and settled in the empty places. Our dispersed people were exterminated or made slaves. Then watchfulness was doubly impressed upon us, and time taught us that union is force. This is inscribed on the Warabert. The Warabert is a place where all the foreign articles were brought by sailors and stored. Hills, bow your heads. Weep, ye streams and clouds. Yes, Shoonland blushes, and enslaved people tramples on your garment. Oh, Freya. Okay, that's as far as I'm going with their ancient history. We're going to shift time and place completely here. To the best of my knowledge, this is around 800 AD. And I wanted to have a bit more of a philosophical discussion because they discuss here kind of the poisoning of their children's minds and the poisoning of society altogether. And that's something we're dealing with on every level of our society today. Just to set this up a little bit, the maidens, the virgins, are held in high regard in this society. And the person speaking here is the Volksmutter, which I'm transliterating in as the folk's mother, or the people's mother. The German Volk is folk. And I'm doing the best I can with some of the pronunciations here. You all know that I was 3 years Bergtmagd. You know also that I was chosen for Volksmutter, and that I refused to be Volksmutter because I wish to marry a Pole. But what you do not know is that I have watched everything that has happened as if I really had been your Volksmutter. I have constantly traveled about, observing what was going on. By that means, I have become acquainted with many things that others do not know. You said yesterday that our relatives on the other side of the Weser were dull and cowardly, but I may tell you that the Magi has not won a single village from them by force of arms, but only by detestable deceit, and still more by the rapacity of their dukes and nobles. Sounds a lot like our gray invasion of today. If you're new here, which amazingly, I got like 200 new subs on a recent video, I just refer to the people that you're not allowed to talk about as the grays. If you're still not getting it, just think money lenders. Okay, so she's saying that you thought our cousins across the river were dull and cowardly, but the Magi have not won a single village from them by force of arms, but only by detestable deceit. Freya has said, we must not admit among us any but free people. But what have they done? They have imitated our enemies, and instead of offing their prisoners or letting them go free, they have despised the counsel of Freya and have made slaves of them. Because they have acted thus, Freya cared no longer to watch over them. They robbed others of their freedom, and therefore they lost their own. This is well known to you, but I will tell you how they came to sink so low. The Finn women had children. These grew up with our free children. They played and gambled together in the fields and were also together by the hearth. No offense to any Finns out there. This is 800 AD we're talking. There, they learned with pleasure the loose ways of the Finns, because they were bad and new, and thus they became denationalized in spite of the efforts of their parents. When the children grew up and saw that the children of the Finns handled no weapons and scarcely worked, they took a distaste for work and became proud. The principal men and their cleverest sons made up the wanton daughters of the Finns, and their own daughters, led astray by this bad example, allowed themselves to be beguiled by the handsome young Finns in derision of their depraved fathers. When the Magi or Magi found this out, he took the handsomest of his Finns and Magyars and promised them, quote, red cows with golden horns, to let themselves be taken prisoners by our people in order to spread his doctrines. His people did even more. Children disappeared, were taken away to the uplands, and after they had been brought up in his pernicious doctrines, were sent back. When these pretend prisoners had learned our language, they persuaded the dukes and nobles that they should become subject to the Magi, that then their sons would succeed them without having to be elected. Those who, by their good deeds, had gained a piece of land in front of their house, they promised on their side should receive an additional piece of land. Those who had got a piece before and behind should have a rondel, a complete circuit. And those who had a rondel should have a whole freehold. If the seniors were true to Freya, then they changed their course and turned to the degenerate sons. Yesterday, there were among you those who would have called the whole people together to compel the eastern states to return to their duty. According to my humble opinion, they would have made a great mistake. Suppose that there were a very serious epidemic among the cattle. Would you run the risk of seeding your own healthy cattle among the sick ones? Certainly not. Everyone must see that doing that would turn out very badly for the whole of the cattle. Who then would be so imprudent as to send their children among a people wholly depraved? If I were to give you any advice, it would be to choose a new Volksmutter. I know that you are in a difficulty about it, because out of the 13 Bergmaiden that we still have remaining, 8 are candidates for the dignity, but I should pay no attention to that. It stands written that every Volksmutter and every Burt maiden should have assistants and messengers, 21 maidens and 7 apprentices. If I might add more, I would recommend that all the respectable girls in the towns should be taught, for I say positively, and time will show it, that if you wish to remain true children of Freya, never to be vanquished by fraud or arms, you must take care to bring up your daughters as true Freya's daughters. You must teach the children how great our country has been, what great men our forefathers were, how great we still are if we compare ourselves to others. You must tell them of the sea heroes, of their mighty deeds and distant voyages. All these stories must be told by the fireside and in the field, wherever it may be, in times of joy or sorrow. And if you wish to impress it on the brains and the hearts of your sons, you must let it flow through the lips of your wives and daughters. Truer words have never been spoken, and I am absolutely tripping out because I lined up all of these images and set the time and everything before I even started talking, and all of the images are like in perfect order for what I'm reading here. The only change I've made is taking 10 seconds off of one clip so that this image came up when I was talking about the Volksmutter. That's called a God shot where I come from, or synchronicity. So I want to read you some of their laws and customs, and then we're going to discuss what we just talked about and our modern poisoning of society. Freya's text. When in dire distress and when mental and physical energy avail nothing, then have recourse to the spirit of Realda. But do not appeal to him before you have tried all other means, for I tell you beforehand, and time will prove its truth, that those who give way to discouragement sink under their burdens. Yeah, so I've never agreed with this idea of praying to God to fix every little thing in your life and to micromanage your life. God is what is making all of this possible. It's the source of all of this. God is what's giving you the opportunity to do these things in life. So a popular saying here is God helps those who help themselves. The way I've always explained it is, if God sends you a pizza, you still got to get up and answer the door. Don't sit around and wait for God to fix all of your problems, and recognize your opportunities as they come. But yes, there are times that you are absolutely broken and defeated, and that's when you call to God, after you've done everything you can possibly think to do. Or if there are red and blue lights in the mirror. To Weralda's spirit only you shall bend the knee in gratitude, thricefold for what you have received. You have seen how speedily I have come to your assistance. Do likewise to your neighbor, but wait not for his entreaties. The suffering would ensure that my maidens would erase your name from the book, and I would regard you as a stranger. Let not your neighbor express his thanks to you on bended knee, which is only due to Weralda's spirit. Envy would assail you, wisdom would ridicule you, and my maidens would accuse you of irreverence. 4 things are given for your enjoyment: air, water, land, and fire. But Weralda is the sole possessor of them. Therefore, my counsel to you is choose upright men who will fairly divide the labor and the fruits, so that no man shall be exempt from work or from the duty of defense. If ever it should happen that one of your people should sell his freedom, he is not of you, he is a bastard. I counsel you to expel him and his mother from the land. Repeat this to your children morning, noon, and night, till they think of it in their dreams. Now, I haven't read much about it, but in here, they hold women in very high regard in their society, and it is the mother's job to teach the children. And so if the son or daughter goes astray, they blame the mother. Also, the Volksmutter seems to be the highest council among them. So women are held in very high esteem here. And they acknowledge the true roles and differences between men and women in society. We're not equal. We're not the same things. It's comparing apples to oranges. A man has his duties and a woman has hers. Yes, a woman might be able to rebuild a carburetor, but if you take a toy car and a baby doll and put them down on the ground, a boy's going to sit there and smash the car against the wall while the girl is going to coddle the baby 9 out of 10 times. This is just instinctual base programming. If any man shall deprive another, even his debtor, of his liberty, let him be to you as a vile slave, and I advise you to burn his body and that of his mother in an open place, and bury them 50 feet below the ground, so that no grass shall grow upon them. It would poison your cattle. Ouch. You know, I think there's actually some truth to that. Do you guys remember the early days of YouTube and What the Bleep Do We Know? Where you can take water, and the one on the left here was encouraged and loving, and the one on the right was aggro, and the water somehow retains these emotional fields. So I could see how an evil person's remains could taint the land. There's also a Native American legend of how corn came to help the people, and this warrior came to a tribe to challenge their best warrior. And like for 2 weeks straight, they would wrestle all night. And it was interesting because they'd fight all night and then they'd both go to the same tent and eat and refresh themselves and rest and then go back out and wrestle. Then finally, the warrior of the tribe bested the warrior that had shown up. Then the warrior that had been bested slowly started dying, and he started developing these little seed-like growths all over him. Then he finally passed away, and they buried him in a field, and a cornstalk grew out of the grave. And this became a staple of the people. If you're into that kind of thing, you can actually look this video up. I really don't sit around and make this shit up. But that's what it made me think of when they said anybody that would enslave another man, bury them 50 feet deep so that the grass that grows out of his grave won't poison the cattle. I think there's things that modern science still hasn't caught on to. Speaking of tainting the well, there shall be no usurers in the market. If any should come, it will be the duty of the maidens to make it known through the whole land, in order that such people may not be chosen for any office, because they are hard-hearted. For the sake of money, they would betray everybody, the people, the mother, their nearest relations, and even their own selves. You know, if we had abided by that, we'd be in a completely different world right now. It is downright insane that just to have a roof over your head, you have to sign yourself up to a banker for 20 years just to have the basic necessity of shelter. And that is one of the biggest tricks that's been played on society today, is the idea that you're supposed to grow up and when you're 18, you go out on your own and then you have to start all over from scratch. Instead of having a patriarch of the family that runs the whole household, which in old times you're talking a few hundred acres in some cases, and then you would just build to accommodate the needs of a family. Now, if you don't go out and rent an apartment from some stranger and throw away all kinds of money until you save up enough to sign yourself up for a bank loan for 20 years, then you're a bum. We have completely been propagandized into that way of thinking, and nobody even realizes it now. We act like it's normal to pay Shlomo twice what a house is worth because of the 20 years of interest that gets tacked on. So they got a really good point about the usurers. And they've codified some other common sense human rights here that are all but forgotten in today's society. Every man may seek the wife of his choice, and every woman may bestow her hand on him who she loves. It's always the woman that chooses ultimately what happens. And remember that for here in a little while. But after they're married, when a man takes a wife, a house and a yard must be given to him. If there is none, one must be built for him. And yeah, unless you've got large family states like I described a minute ago, it seems like the most basic, fundamental human principle is that the young people of your society deserve to have a house. Now, look, I'm 100% a proponent of capitalism and the idea of reward for effort. That's what motivates people to be successful and innovative. But we separate everything into black and white categories, so capitalist or socialist. And I think that there are some socialistic ideas that have merit. And one of those ideas is that in a successful society as we have, we can find a way that when young people come of age, they have the basic necessities of life, which in our modern world is a home, a car, and food to eat. If they want more than that, which most people will, they can go out and earn it. But everyone should at least start off with the basic necessities in life. And here's my idea of that. I call it the you can't take it with you clause. You set a limit of, I don't know, a couple $1,000,000, and anybody that makes more than that, when they pass on, that goes into the public fund. I mean, one person like Warren Buffett could provide housing and a car for 10 years worth of adults coming of age. Now, yeah, you can still leave your kids an inheritance, but more like $1,000,000 each, where the rest of the 145 billion goes back into the public fund. And then if you have a sound money economy not ran by usurers, then that $1,000,000 will actually go a long ways. And if I ever thought it would go anywhere, I could go into much more detail, but it won't. So you get the basic idea. So let's do a breakdown of all that, and I'll be the absolute bigot that you guys know me to be. By the way, some people do not get humor and sarcasm. That's sarcasm when I say things like that. But I do have very old-fashioned morals and ideals. You know, they say if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. When we're young, we see all the problems of the world and our heart bleeds. And we think, we got to find a better way than this. We can do better than this. But then when you get older, you start to realize the world's going to shit because we abandon the old, rigidly virtuous ways. You know, I have my issues with modern Christianity, and I think they got a lot of things wrong in there. But it was due to the principles and morals of rigidly religious people that we have the high trust, open, free society that we do today. We don't have walls around cities anymore. And most of that came from the principle of love thy neighbor that was propagated through Christianity. So I think it's important to have a strict set of morals and understand that you are children of God. You're not God. Not on the surface level, but I'm not going deep on that one. Okay, first off, I love the idea of if you have an evil person or a usurer, you tell the maidens to spread the word and they go out and let everybody know. That is a good use of women's natural talent. Women like to talk. Now, I know not all women are a certain way, but stereotypes exist for a reason. And if you want word to get around, get the girls to go start talking about it. It'll get everywhere quick. Before the internet, nothing got around faster than the speed of rumor. And trust me, if a woman doesn't like somebody, her man's going to hear about it. And it might sound like I'm ragging on women here in a second, but that's really not my intention. My point is, women play an important role in society that has been attacked the hardest by the beast system that we have. And if you want to degrade the morals of a society, start with the women and the men will follow suit. They say every man may seek the wife of his choice and every woman may bestow her hand on him whom she loves. The women are the ones who ultimately decide on that, and the women are the ones that ultimately run a household. As a contractor, I've saved a couple of marriages by telling the dude, shut up and do what she wants. Now, I disagree with that being taken to the extreme, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But, you know, when you're talking about the different shades of blue on the siding of the outside of the house that you're never going to look at, just do what she wants, man. But here's the truth is the woman decides in a relationship, and we wouldn't have cities if it weren't for women. Men would have never built cities for themselves. They built all this for women. And this idea of equality and a woman can do everything a man can do. Yeah, okay, but you don't have to. A man will gladly do that for you. And all you have to do is be true to him, not even submissive in most cases, just true to him. So I can't tell you how much feminism has harmed and set back our society. And here, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. And yes, the septum ring is a huge red flag, but that's not my point here.
every kind of like weirdo likes to comment this on my videos. And I'm going to tell you what they really want to say. I am weirdly attracted to you, but you're talking. I don't like it when women talk because it hurts my brain. It makes me mad. You're an object. And I don't like the way that you're making choices as an object. I should make all the choices for you.
Yeah, so this young lady has been told by old butch professors that this is actually how the world works, and she's obviously never spent much time around a normal family. The truth is, in about 70% of relationships, the woman has absolutely dominated the man into submission to where he doesn't dare say a word back or he knows he's going to hear about it for the next week. See, the truth is, if she wasn't absolutely brainwashed into this way of thinking, there's some buck out there that would do every little thing that she asked of him. Now, yes, the scruples and dignity of a lot of men has been absolutely annihilated in our society, but there's still good men out there, and there's still good women out there. I'll bag on the fellas here in a minute. I can only do one thing at a time. But if she had spent any time in a two-family home, she'd understand the principle, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. And while, yes, some men out there completely objectify women, some women out there completely subjugate men. We have fundamentally different talents like that. So now, let me be brutally honest and piss everybody off. Usually if I wait till 30 minutes into a video, I've weeded out the looky-loos, and you guys at least understand I'm coming from a place of compassion here. I hate to see it for everybody. I'm not saying I'm perfect, probably worse than most, but I'm old enough to see the error of my ways. Freya has said we must not admit among us any but free people. But they admitted not free people in and had children. These grew up with our free children. They played and gambled together in the fields and were also together by the hearth. There they learned with pleasure the loose ways of the unfree children because they were bad and new, and thus they became denationalized in spite of the efforts of their parents. So in today's world, we're not divided up into free and unfree. Now it's just more like good upbringing, bad upbringing, and it's almost impossible to tell the difference between who's who, which helps the poison to spread faster. They throw us all in public school together, where the bad kids hardly ever pick up the habits of the good kids, but the good kids pick up the habit of the bad kids. And then our so-called higher education has been corrupted through and through by the comrade ideology, at least since the 60s. And our literal enemies are writing the textbooks that teach our children to be self-loathing. Well, if you're one color, you should despise yourself just because you are. And then if you're another color, you should despise everybody else because you're oppressed. And if you're one sex, then everything you do is wrong. And if you're one sex, then everything you do is right. And we've allowed our enemies to teach our children that the country that developed the most free, prosperous society in the history of the world stole all their ideas from slaves and have no culture of their own. That bitterness spreads like a disease. I was around people that were brought up that way for 2 years, and after that, I completely hated myself and the world. Unfortunately, when I'm around other people a lot, I start to think and act like them. A lot of people do and don't realize it. And just through daily interaction and conversation with them, I'd start to think like them. And then I couldn't stand myself because I didn't want to be like them. It took me years to work my way out of that hole. When I started this channel, I was still a pretty bitter person. And like they say here, suppose that there was a very serious epidemic among the cattle. Would you run the risk of sending your own healthy cattle among the sick ones? No, certainly not. But in a free society such as we have, we not only don't separate them from the herd, we put them in charge. You know, it takes a certain type of person to think that they're just so much smarter than everybody else that they should be making decisions for everybody else, to put the effort in to try to get a position of power like that when they're the last frickin' people that should be in charge of other people. Normally, they can't even manage their own lives, but they think they know what's best for everybody else. And they've sold this idea that Christians were responsible for colonization worldwide. It wasn't Christians. It was the Church of Rome, the Holy Roman Empire. which is a political organization fronting as a religious one. And it was the Protestant Christians that fought and were massacred by the hundreds of thousands that actually broke away from their control and created free societies. You hardly ever see a Protestant Christian in places of power because they were taught that all people are created equal and you should love thy neighbor. If someone strikes you, turn the other cheek. That ideology rarely breeds megalomaniacs. Of course, there are exceptions to all rules. But if you look at the early days of America, the people that fled persecution for religious freedom in America came over here and lived peacefully side by side with the Native Americans. And their way of life was convincing enough that many Native Americans adopted Christianity. Everybody now thinks of the Wild West as a bunch of people just shooting each other out in the streets and bar brawls and whiskey. Well, the reason that you know the names of all of the bad guys and the bandits is because they were the exception to the rule. The other 99% were devout Christians with a strict moral code. But when you let your enemies teach that history, then you get a bastardization of the truth. If I might add more, I would recommend that all the respectable girls in the town should be taught, for I say positively, and time will show it, that if you wish to remain true children of Freya, never to be vanquished by fraud or arms, you must take care to bring up your daughters as true Freya's daughters. If the women of your society are strictly virtuous and demand that of their men for them to be with them, then men will follow suit and do what they have to do to be with them. Now, not all men, you're still going to have degenerates, but you're going to have enough righteous men to set the tone for society and kick the arse of the degenerates. There's a reason that clubs have ladies' night and not men's night. That's because if you have a room full of women, men will pay to get in there. So the women really do hold all of the cards when it comes to relationships. And that's why the virtue of young women was staunchly defended up until just recently. It wasn't that long ago that for a young lady to go out on a date or go to the school dance with a young man, they were chaperoned. Adults know what it's like. Your hormones are going through the roof and you're thirsty. So they didn't just leave it up to the willpower of the young lady, which is what it really comes down to. A guy is really going to try. All the blood's left his brain and it's in his other head. So it's normally up to the young lady to draw the line in the sand. And in old times, they just didn't leave those matters up to chance. Today, we think of arranged marriages as barbaric. But you know what? That at least ensured that everybody had a partner. And it's funny how they could arrange two kids that have never met each other to get married, and they would learn to love and depend on each other and live their entire lives together with hardly any divorce rate. But now in our civilized society where we marry the person that we love, we have a 40 to 50% divorce rate. And I'm not even trying to put that all on women. There are all kinds of scumbag men out there. But the degraders of society know damn good and well that if you loosen the morals of women, then you loosen the morals of an entire society. That's why they put extra emphasis on daughters here. You must take care to bring up your daughters as true Freya's daughters if you wish to never be vanquished by fraud or arms. A virtuous woman will instill virtue in her children, where a loose woman will instill loose values in her children. And even with all of our progressiveness, a woman is still 10 times more likely to actually be teaching the children at home, while the man is out doing what he has to do to provide. Most of these progressive ideas aren't progress towards healthy growth. It's progress for the people that are trying to tear our society down. And ultimately, what all of this workplace equality has accomplished was made it where both parents have to go to work now, and made it where half the kids have grown up in a single family home. So I'm sure I've pissed all kinds of women off here. I'll just stop there. But all I'm saying is if you protect your daughters, then the degenerate men will wither on the vine. They won't produce more degenerate men because no virtuous woman will be with them. That doesn't work the other way around. Men will sleep with any girl that'll let them, and then that produces more degenerates. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.